Good afternoon, everybody. Evidently, our open doesn't work, but that's okay. Matt and I are here. It's a Friday, and it wouldn't be a Friday, Matthew, if we were not talking about Lane Kiffin and the fallout from what is going to happen when he does make a decision.
Yeah, I think this is Friday. I think we've talked about Lane Kiffin all 5 days. Heck, we may open the show with Lane Kiffin all 5 days at this point. But he still has yet to make a decision. There's a supposed meeting on the table with him and Ole Miss's athletic director today. I
Mm-hmm.
believe his name is Keith Carter. Um,
Yeah.
that I would think might give us some resolution as to the situation as a whole, but it, especially recently, the drama that's been stirred up online, it feels like this thing is coming to a head one way or another, and whether it be this weekend or early next week, you would assume that a decision from Lane Kiffin will be had before the Egg Bowl.
Well, you know that the trustees at the university, at Ole Miss, uh, informed the president and athletic director that either he is the coach or he isn't the coach, and they want to know either before the Egg Bowl or at the absolute latest right after it,
Mm-hmm.
because they have prepared. They're prepared to go without him.
Yeah, I mean, the way this saga has played out, you'd be a fool to have not done some due diligence
Hmm.
and homework and have a preparation plan in case of emergency where Lane Kiffin does leave you. Because I mean, the way this thing's been going and trending is there's been times where Ole Miss feels like, yeah, we're getting him back, and then there's been times where it feels like he's going anywhere but Ole Miss.
Hmm.
This is, I mean, this is beating a lot of like there have been some fantastic photo finishes in terms of recruiting battles over the
Right.
years. This Lane Kiffin saga is right up there with some of the best in terms of recruits and how they flip at the last second.
Yeah. Only this one affects a tremendous amount of lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking assistant coaches. We're talking, everybody at basically they've locked up three universities.
Yeah, and I mean these are places that yes, those three universities are locked up, but after this whole saga plays out, there's going to be two job openings.
Right.
So they're going to have to pivot to whoever they deem to be their plan B. At LSU, I would be pretty confident in saying that their plan B will probably be a little bit different than Florida's plan B. Um, what do you see? You have good sources down there in Florida. Who do you think their backup options would be?
I think their backup option right now is Munkin and Key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say it's like 1A and 1B. I mean, there's no either one they would be happy with.
Yeah, and I think an interesting thing, at least on the Brent Key side of things, because this has been talked about a lot recently. There's a lot of head coaches that are actually like some of them are in the thick of playoff races,
Mhm.
and they're looking at other opportunities. Brent Key is one of those guys,
Mhm.
and he has a quote out there that said, "Cut me open, see what colors I bleed," which is a really nice thing of him to say. But it's also not him denying the the accusations that were brought. It, unless you get a straight denial, you can never say never in college football.
Right.
Um, so while I would be surprised to see Brent Key leave his alma mater for somewhere else,
Mhm.
it also wouldn't be surprising if a place like Florida is enough temptation to draw him away.
Yeah, it's possible. And I think that Munkin, if he doesn't I mean, he Munkin is up for the Jets job. He's up for a number of jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like he has to come back to college. It's does he want to come back to college? And I kind of feel that he might. And if he does, I mean, I would think that would be a home run uh, get. I mean, we've talked about Munkin before, and I honestly think that I'll go out and I'll just go ahead and say it. I think Munkin might actually be a better uh, get for Florida than Lane Kiffin.
It is very possible for that. The only side of thing, I'd be very curious on Monken and his recruiting. Now, he had no problems when he was in Georgia with his recruiting, and as we know, the staff that is there at Florida and the recruiting base that they built during Billy Napier's time there is going to remain. So that will be helpful for whoever becomes the head coach at Florida there. But yeah, he's a guy that's going to get a lot of interest. I would not be surprised. I know it's been floated out there that if Atlanta decides to move on from Raheem Morris after this year, that Todd Monken is a name that the people of the state of Georgia would like to have back as well. He's going to have ample opportunity across the country in college and the NFL.
Well, that's why Jimmy Sexton is pitching him and Key. I mean, it's like you don't want one of my clients. I got two more, on deck.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of crazy, but it is what it is at this point in time, and we're wondering where this is all going to end when the chairs go down. But I got to think that we're going to have some resolution to this in a week to 10 days. I can't see it. I just can't see it dragging on. I can't see it. There's too much at stake for all the schools, but frankly, to be honest, for Ole Miss, if Lane chooses to go, and he waits until the last minute, they're gonna. I mean, it'll be a job that people will want, but the potential coaches that they have that might take the gig, there may be two or three of them off the board.
Yeah, I did get a little bit of a better perspective on the whole issue because I've been very much in the camp of this feels very selfish from Lane Kiffin. And while I still think he is responsible for some of the blame in terms of the amount of noise that has come out of this decision that he is eventually going to make, that is a lot on him. Some of the stuff that he does on social media is a lot on him. But the process and the timing of the situation is not as much on him. I heard Josh Pay talk about it. It's the schedule in college football.
Right.
The schedule in college football has created this mess for all these universities. Not something that Kiffin can control, that these universities are actively pursuing them as hard as they are right now. They're pursuing them as hard as they are right now because they know that this is the time that they need a new head coach. They need a coach before that first portal window. They need a coach before signing day. So they're up between a rock and a hard place in terms of the timing of all this, and this just happens to be when it's playing out. It's also really inconvenient for all of the other people that it will impact.
Yeah, and let's just play this out for just a second. You mentioned he is, very good possibility they may end up in a playoff, right? Spot. Monken still has 7 games left to go with the Ravens. So, what happens there? Meanwhile, at Ole Miss, I've heard that Charlie Weiss Jr. would be promoted to interim if that were the case, if they needed.
Okay. Originally, people had theorized, and I think it was simply a theory, that Pete Golding, their defensive coordinator, would be the one to take the interim spot. Not that it really matters at that point, because at that point, you give somebody that tag, but it's all of the coordinators and position coaches working together to fill the role of the guy that left.
Well, here's the other thing that I would be very curious about. Let's say Ole Miss, let's say for the sake of argument for the moment that Kiffin leaves Ole Miss. Doesn't matter where he goes, just for the moment, he leaves. And they leave before the playoffs. Are those players going to still play in the playoffs? I mean, there's a lot of them who are eligible for the draft. And we've seen that mass exit routine before.
We have. I think this is I would say that would be a very unprecedented circumstance if Lane Kiffin were to leave, having Ole Miss having players sit out.
Right.
if they're in the playoff. You assume they're in the playoff. It's very hard to see a path where they aren't in the playoff right now. I just find it hard to believe that the players would give up on going to the playoffs. In all likelihood, they would be hosting a playoff game as well. So I would find it hard to believe that they would quit on the team the same way that the coach would be perceived as.
I think that you're right in that regard, because it may galvanize the team. It may make them, really want to prove to their coach, wait a minute, you're leaving us. Let us show you what you're leaving.
Yeah.
That's very reminiscent. And we're going back to history here. That when just before the NCAA tournament in basketball, Bill Frieder had been reportedly interested in taking the Arizona State basketball job while he's coaching Michigan. One day after the season finished and they were getting ready to go to the tournament, the Big Ten tournament and then the NCAA tournament, because they had a great team at that time. It was the Fab Five. Bo Schembechler said, if you don't want to be at Michigan, that's okay with me, but go now. You want to go to Arizona, go now.
Yeah. So
he kicked him out, and they went on to win a national championship. So that's what happened, under the Frieder situation. So it's not something that hasn't happened before. It's just it's kind of unseemly, I guess, would be the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, it hasn't really happened in football. Really.
No.
In a situation that you can remember like this. Yeah, and it's definitely a thing where those players, I think you would be hard-pressed to not take it personally if you're any one of those players. You wouldn't be playing Lane Kiffin in the playoffs, but you still have something to prove in a sense of he didn't think we were good enough here to do what we're about to do.
Right.
And there's a certain aspect to that.
Yeah, and
I definitely think. I think there's.
Yeah, we're having a little audio difficulty with you just for the minute. So yeah, as we're talking about the potential of what might happen to Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss team, and as well as Florida, LSU, and multiple other schools out there who are looking for head coaches. So we'll see how that continues to unfold.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just to say there's a result in the cards here for Ole Miss where they wind up a little better off without Lane Kiffin. Like there's him leaving can create a galvanization, and maybe you get a deeper run or a better result than you would have gotten with him as head coach. There's also a chance that you go and you hit on your next head coach if he does leave. As long as your NIL situation remains in the state that it has been, and you're able to navigate the changing landscape of NIL in the coming years, then this isn't a spot that Lane Kiffin is the sole reason that it's successful. Is you can look at things outside of Lane Kiffin, and I will still say he deserves the credit for what he has built there. But you can look to things outside of Lane Kiffin himself and see other people succeeding at Ole Miss.
Sure.
It has the potential to pan out for them well, even if they don't wind up with what they believe is the big fish.
Well, you could go rolling over Tulane. You can go to there's a bunch of I've seen the James Madison coach. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. In the mix for some of these jobs. So yeah, there's definitely. It's not like there's other coaches that can't coach out there. It's just going to be different. That's all. So
yeah.
we shall see. Tonight, Florida State. Before we go to tonight, I want to go personally on the record and say, please do not listen to me with regard to my predictions, because the Bills just proved last night that logic goes nowhere in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Bills. That's another bad loss. Talked about the Houston Texans needing to win a couple that they weren't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
That's win number 3 with Davis Mills at the helm. That's honestly really impressive. I don't know if that says more about Davis Mills and this Houston team, or it says more about C.J. Stroud right now. But the Bills have their issues, and they have now fallen yet another game behind the New England Patriots in an attempt to keep pace in that division. And they look a bit broken. They don't really have any great options at wide receiver right now.
Yeah, it's like, everybody's beat up at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the game with the game last week with the Buccaneers, everything was clicking, and you thought, okay, well, the Bills are back, and then they go to Houston, and they are they can't score 30 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think it needs to be said that Houston defense is one of the better units in the NFL.
Sure.
So it's not necessarily as much a knock on the Bills in that offense. It does, when you play a defense that is as good as the Bills or as the Texans defense is, especially when they have 2 really good corners in Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, then a weakness at wide receiver can get exposed, and it did get exposed last night. But it's also a larger signal that, hey, this Bills defense really is this bad. Like it's a legitimate weakness on that Buffalo team, and it's not one that they're just going to be able to magically patch and fix on both receiver and the defensive side of the football.
If I told you at the beginning of the NFL season, and we'll get to college football in just a minute, that the number 1 team in the AFC might be the New England Patriots, would you have laughed me out of the room, or how would that go?
I'm not sure I would have laughed you out of the room. I was very high on the New England Patriots. I bet my buddy. He gave me a pretty good line. He gave me 5.5 wins. I was like, yeah, I'm taking the over on that all day. Now, in my belief in what the New England Patriots could be, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine me being this right about this prediction. One of the very few times this happens. But I nailed this one. So I wouldn't have laughed you out the room. I would have said I believe in them. That might be a stretch, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, you would have had the right to hold it over my head on that one. No question about it. All right, let's go. Tonight starts the college football season. College football weekend, and we got Florida State at NC State. That's an 8:00 game on ESPN. Arma Sharouf and Andre Ware on the call, followed by on FS1 at 10:30 p.m. Dan Haley and Petros Papadakis are in Vegas, baby, where Hawaii goes to see Dan Mullen and UNLV. So 2 games tonight, doubleheader there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in terms of Florida State and NC State, it doesn't mean a whole lot for NC State, I think, in the grand scheme of things. I still think that every game for Florida State right now is very important in terms of the grand scheme of things. You now are in a place where James Franklin's off the board in terms of a potential head coaching replacement. It feels more and more like you are stuck with Mike Norvell for at least next year. So you want to see some positive momentum built. This year's obviously leaps and bounds better than what 2-10 was for them last year. This is a solid NC State team. This is an NC State team that, if you're being honest about it, Florida State probably is better than. I found a stat today that said Florida State has outgained every single one of their opponents that they've played, yet they're 5-6 football team, or a 5-5 football team. So it's been a both good and bad year. They've had some things that point in the right direction for Florida State, but they have not been able to get the job done. You would like to see them outgain NC State tonight and win the football game as well.
Right. That would be a definite plus. Let's take a look at tomorrow's Saturday noon window. On ABC, we got Missouri, Oklahoma. On Fox, it's Rutgers at Ohio State. ESPN has Virginia Tech hosting Miami. The Deuce has Louisville at SMU. ESPNU has The Game, as it's called, Harvard at Yale. And FS1 has Kansas, Iowa State. TNT has Baylor, Arizona. SEC Network has Charlotte at the Dogs. Minnesota at Northwestern on Big Ten. ACC has Delaware at Wake Forest. And CBSN has Tulsa at Army. Is there any of those games that have has your interest?
The Mizzou Oklahoma game has my interest. Oklahoma is a game by game scenario. I know you only got 2 games left if you're Oklahoma, but these are 2 losable games against 2 talented football teams. And this is a spot that Eli Drinkwitz kind of thrives in. It's very much an underdog spot. No one's expecting him to win. Bo Perbula has been medically cleared to play on Saturday. It's now more of a coach's decision if he feels like it's the right move to insert Perbula in. But listen, this is where Eli Drinkwitz knows what's on the line here. Not in terms of his football team, but in terms of the Oklahoma football team. And if you think that Mizzou wouldn't love to knock Oklahoma out of the college football playoffs, you would be sadly mistaken. So this is a game where Ahmad Hardy is one of the best backs in college football, and they have an ability to create more balance on offense against that Oklahoma defense than Alabama had last week. They're going to need that balance, and Hardy's going to have another big game to back up last week, but they have the chance to knock Oklahoma out of the college football playoff on Saturday.
And they would love it. All right, let's move to the 3:30 window. Arkansas at Texas. SC up in Oregon. Syracuse at Notre Dame. TCU at Houston. Furman, Clemson. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. K-State, Utah. Tulane, Temple. Michigan State at Iowa. Coastal Carolina at South Carolina. Michigan at Maryland. Duke at UNC. Jacksonville State at FIU. Eastern Illinois at Alabama. And Oklahoma State at UCF.
Yeah, the ones that stuck out to me are the ones that I've already gone through and I've written out my predictions and my breakdowns on, and that's Texas and Arkansas and Vanderbilt and Kentucky. In terms of Arkansas, I did it again. I picked Texas to lose. That is now the 4th week in a row that I picked Texas to lose. I am 1-2 across the first 3 weeks, but I also picked Florida earlier in the year, so I'm going to call it a clean 2-2. Looking to get above 500 this week, but I picked Arkansas because Arkansas has the offensive horses, and I want to see the mental makeup of that Texas team, knowing that they are effectively eliminated from the college football playoffs based on their ranking this past Tuesday. I'm very curious to see the makeup of this team. They're a team that's played much better at home, and I get that, but Arkansas has been so close in conference this year. I mean, they have just been in nail biters with literally every team, with the exception of Texas A&M this year, it seems. And so I'm just picking this one more as a tossing of the bone to Arkansas, saying, you've been so close. Surely you got to get one. And this is one of the last ones they can get.
I'll give you a quick stat. Arkansas has been either ahead or tied with 4 minutes left to go in 4 of their losses.
Yeah, I mean, that paints you a pretty clear picture of the way Arkansas has played football. They've been fantastic on offense, but they can't stop a nosebleed on defense. And that's ultimately been the thing that's came back to bite them. And in terms of Vanderbilt and Kentucky, it's another spot where you have a playoff elimination on the line. Kentucky's injury list is a mile long, but they're still going to show up and play football. And Mark Stoops' teams have played fantastic. They've gotten better as the year's gone on, as you would expect a team to. And Vanderbilt's a team that's going to be fighting for their playoff lives. Once again, they're at 2 losses. They're already on the back side of that top 12 ranking, so they can't afford another one at all. But this is a stepping stone. You beat Kentucky first, and then you go on the road to Tennessee as what would be your final case maker for Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be fascinating to be sure. I'm going to be watching USC at Oregon, in large part to see how USC. USC needs the game. Oregon needs the game. Um, USC needs it more than Oregon, but Oregon is not a lock for a college football playoff spot and
No.
a spot in the Big Ten title game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Nor is USC. But whoever comes out of this, it's much like you just said about the elimination game. This is this is basically an elimination game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is for USC. I'm a bit bullish on whether or not it'd be an elimination game for Oregon. I just don't know how far the committee would drop them, because you're talking about a team in USC that would be moving up towards that top 12, potentially into that top 12 as well. So they'll obviously think highly of them. It's an interesting case, but it is an elimination game for Lincoln Riley and the Trojans. And I'll be rooting for USC just because of the potential storyline that if Oklahoma were to make the playoff and USC were to win out and also make the playoff,
Right.
I would love to see that game. I think everybody who's a fan of college football would love to see that game. I think people who aren't fans of college football would probably love to see that game.
It definitely would get some ratings. There's no question about it. That would be the revenge game, as we've been talking about revenge games. I mean, Utah's playing pretty good football, so that Utah K-State game might be worth watching.
Yeah, it should be. K-State's another team. They started off the year really bad. What were they?
Yeah.
They were like 2-5, 1-5.
Yeah, they got crazy, and then they started winning again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they kind of pulled it together, and steadied the seas over there in Kansas. But Utah is a team that has just been quietly beating the crap out of everybody that isn't Texas Tech and BYU. They're sitting on the backside of those playoffs as well, actively rooting against Oklahoma and Vanderbilt this weekend, because those are two spots that could potentially open up. But they're just lurking. And as they lurk, I'm not more confident in one team remaining focused the way that I'm confident that Utah will remain focused for these final two of the season. I have more confidence in Kyle Whittingham and his ability to keep his guys focused than I do with Brent Venables at Oklahoma, than I do with Lincoln Riley, than I do with Clark Lee at Vanderbilt.
Right.
I believe in what he's built there, and I think they will probably wind up waiting and seeing, because that's all they can do is wait and see at the end of the year.
Right.
But I think they're going to take care of business this week, and then next week I believe they have Kansas, and I think they're probably going to take care of both of those teams.
Yeah, they're at home, and it's tough to play Utah at home, and so yeah, I agree with you. I think this is going to be a fun game for Utah. Maybe not so much for K-State, but a fun game for Utah. The 8:00 games, or 7:30 games, I should say. These are a couple of games here that what might have been games to me. Tennessee is at Florida. That might have been a very important and entertaining game with regard to the Southeastern Conference playoffs and maybe even the college football playoffs, getting to that spot. And both teams right now are not even close.
Yeah, it's a matchup of two teams that are almost certainly disappointed with the way things have gone. I talked about it in my write-up this week. Tennessee is a place where fans they're not upset, but they're a little bit bullish on Josh Heupel and the way things have kind of panned out this year. They haven't been the most pleased. Their expectations were not met for what they believe this season could be for Tennessee. And for what is a bullish fan base right now, they could turn real angry if things get ugly in Gainesville on Saturday. That's not a prediction. I'm fairly certain I picked Tennessee. Or actually, I may not have picked. I can't remember who I picked. But it feels like a game that's very much up in the air, one that you would hope that you come away with if you're Tennessee, and another one where you could write, if you're Florida, another chapter in a rivalry that has been storied here for the past 2 decades in the SEC East.
Right. It'll be interesting. We got Nebraska, Penn State, BYU, and Cincinnati. That could be entertaining. That's in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game of the night, I guess, in the primetime hour, and it's on ESPN. It's Pitt at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, Pitt at Georgia Tech did a full game preview that's out on Sports Talk Georgia now for this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game that Georgia Tech obviously can't afford to lose. Right now, this is the end of their ACC conference schedule. But what awaits them after Pitt is Georgia next week. Things don't get easier. They already have the one loss. If you get to 3, obviously, if they control their own destiny in the ACC title game, then their ticket is always going to be open, or their destiny is always going to be in their own hands.
Right.
But as of right now, I picked Pitt to win that game. And it's simply this Georgia Tech team has relied solely on their offense all year. Their defense has been bad against the pass. It's been bad against the run. They haven't really had any bright spots on that defensive side of the football, which is surprising for a team that is as physical as Brent Key would like them to be. So I think Pitt's going to win. I think Pitt continues their journey to the ACC title game. But don't get me wrong, Georgia Tech's favored. Georgia Tech's at home. They have more than enough firepower to get the job done. But I think they're going to have to outplay Pitt.
I think Pitt was embarrassed last week against Notre Dame. I think, everybody, the expectation was that Pitt probably would lose to Notre Dame, but they could play them close. And that didn't work out that way. And I think that what we're going to see against Georgia Tech is we're either going to see the Pitt team that we've seen most of the year, which has, been a gritty little, engine that could type team, playing a team in Georgia Tech who's played it. I mean, they've been on the razor's edge of a number of games. They could have lost 3 or 4 games if they won. But their credit, they won. So, you give them that. I mean, could Pitt beat Georgia Tech? Sure. Could Georgia Tech beat Pitt? Yep. There's a lot of similarities between these two teams. And for Pitt, I do believe they have talent-wise a little bit more talent than Georgia Tech. Now, does that translate into a win in Atlanta at Bobby Dodd Stadium? I don't know, but we will certainly see.
Hey, Jim, you mind if I got to do something really quickly? I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Okay, I'll take people through the rest of the games.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. All right. North Texas, who got the ranking for the first time since the late 1950s, travels from Denton over to Rice. For those of you not knowing where Denton is, it's just north of the Metroplex there in Dallas-Fort Worth. They're going to Houston to play Rice. That should be a win for North Texas. That should keep them in the conversation for the playoffs and in the conversation for the American Conference title. Colorado State at Boise State, big game for Boise State. Boise State still has some expectations that they can take the mountain and perhaps find a way to the playoffs again. Western Kentucky is at LSU. That's not worth your time. That's on the SEC network. The Big Ten Network, Illinois, Wisconsin, nothing to see there. Okay, ACC network is Cal at Stanford. That's a long, traditional Bay Area rivalry game. Cal and Stanford. Both teams have played better than I think most expected. And, now that they're in the ACC, you've got some interesting things to look at. And I think Cal and Stanford is a game that, because of the rivalry, because of the fact that these two teams have been linked together for over 100 years they've played against each other. It's one of those storied rivalries. So would it be of interest? Basically against Pitt and Georgia Tech? Well, it might be worth checking out as the evening goes by. So there's your game between them and New Mexico's the Air Force. That's a game of obviously in the Mountain West of. I think it's going to be hard for New Mexico to beat Air Force in out there in Colorado Springs, but we'll see. The late games, Washington is at UCLA. They're playing at the Rose Bowl. Washington, I think you could say, has had a disappointing season. I don't think they really felt that they played up to their expectations and their abilities. UCLA is, they've since they got rid of Deshaun Foster, they have played 500 ball, and playing at home might just be something that helps them, because the next game they play they won't have to go far because it'll be against USC over at the Coliseum. So from that standpoint, if UCLA can knock off Washington, I think that would be a feather in the cap of the Bruins. San Jose State, San Diego State, big game for both those teams, specifically more so San Diego State. That game's on FS1. It's a 10:30 game. Way over on CBS Sports Net, Utah State at Fresno State. That's also a 10:30 game. So there you got those games. Let's see if we can find some others in the different windows that might be of interest. Let's see. We got we got Nevada at Wyoming. That's going to be interesting. It's a Mountain West game. Scrolling down here, taking a look. USF and UAB play at 3:00 on ESPN Plus. That's Pete Souza and Forrest Conley on the call of that game. It's a must-win for South Florida if they have any expectations of even, a very long shot chance at taking the American title. We've talked about Arkansas, Texas. We've talked about USC and Oregon. Syracuse is at Notre Dame. Should be another win for the Irish. That game, of course, is on NBC. Dan Hicks and Jason Garrett. Talked about Kentucky and Vandy. Michigan State, Iowa. That's on FS1. Connor Onwin and Mark Heiflick is on the call there. Tulane is at Temple. They're in Philly. That's a 3:30 game. Chuck Kemp and Darius Walker on that call. Duke, North Carolina. That's a ACC network game. Wes Durham and Steve Avisato on the call there. It's a big game for North Carolina. I don't think that at this point in time that that Belichick wants to see another loss, especially to Duke. They're playing that game at Chapel Hill, but you got to think that Duke's going to have a pretty good chance of taking that one home with them at the end of the day. Scrolling down here real quick to the 7:00 window, we've pretty much touched on all the big games there. BYU at Cincinnati is going to be an 8 p.m. game on Fox. Jason Benedetti and RG3 on the call there. Big game for BYU. They can't afford to lose if they want to get into the playoff picture. Arizona State is in Boulder at Colorado. That's Mike Monaco and Kurt Morrison on the call on ESPN2. Big game for Arizona State. From that standpoint, I think it should be very entertaining game. They're playing in Boulder against a very good Colorado team. So that's what's going on right now for your Saturday and for your Friday night, looking at what's going to happen. Let's take a quick look at the sports headlines as we get ready. New York Yankees are looking to get an opportunity to trade for the Texas Rangers shortstop superstar Corey Seager. We'll have to see how that works out for them. It looks like it looks like it's going to be a very entertaining situation with that regard. The Premier League is going to introduce a spending cap next season. Let's see. Josh Allen talks about the inconsistencies and they persisted in their loss to Houston as the Bills slipped further out of the AFC East race. They could be 3 games down and gone by the time Sunday's finished. Goodell says every expectation that Nashville might host a Super Bowl with their new stadium is it's possible once they get that stadium up and running. Let's see, over on the college football side, we know that Mack Rhodes has resigned a week after taking personal reasons. That's going to put Dave Aranda in kind of a very interesting position. We don't know if he's going to still hang around or if they're going to get rid of him. Auburn will start freshman quarterback Deuce Knight for his first start of his career this week against Mercer. So there's that going on. NCAA basketball on the men's side, number 24 Kansas plays Vegas in the Vegas tournament. That should be a fun thing to watch. In women's hoops, number 5 LSU beat Alcorn State 112-49, setting a record for the 6th straight 100-point game for women's hoops. So that's what we got right now. And Matthew's back, so here we'll put him back. Just finished out the television slate and hit a couple of the main stories. One which it's a baseball story before we get to the NFL. Just a quick pop because it's hot stove hasn't quite started yet, but this might kick things off. The Yankees are talking to the Texas Rangers about a multiplayer trade that could bring them Corey Seager.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard. That Seager was on the block simply because they were looking to offload some salary. This offseason, Texas Rangers are. That can happen, with these teams that sometimes they go all in and then they look to dump a little bit later.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all that they get rid of 2 or 3 players at least. When you do a salary dump like that, you usually might as well, there's no sense in sending Corey Seager out if you're not going to send, 2 or 3 other people with him.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something where it's not a one-off move, which is odd because the signals from the Rangers seem to indicate that they were looking to compete last year, and you would expect that to have continued into this year. But it's clear that they either don't see Corey Seager as worth the value anymore, or it's just a signal of a change of thinking out of the ownership group.
I think, the fallacy here is that Texas doesn't have the money to play, which is ridiculous. They do. And, they just, that stadium is only 4 or 5 years old. So it's not like, revenue sources have been good for Texas. It's not, they got a good, deal, local TV deal, so everything is trending in Texas's favor financially. Maybe they figure, all right, we can trade Corey and the bounty we get from the Yankees will serve us well. If that's the case, well then, okay, I get it. If you feel that you're not competitive, but that AL West is not necessarily, overwhelming when you start looking at the teams there, other than what the Mariners did, and the Mariners just caught fire at the end of the season.
Yeah, I would think that Houston probably still looms in terms of Rangers thinking, but I would be curious. You'll get an understanding of what the Rangers' thought process is if they do offload him and what the package is returned.
Right.
Because if the package returned is, looking more along the lines of MLB ready guys, then that's
Mhm.
signaling that they just wanted to reallocate their money, and they will in free agent.
Yeah, we'll have to see what goes with that. And the Yankees obviously looking for a shortstop. And, the other thing is Corey Seager, the past couple of years has been out with injury for some extended periods. So, read into that what you will. But I think that maybe, just maybe, the Rangers are looking at the money and saying, if the Yankees are truly interested and they can give us something in return, we can offload that salary and probably live with the fact that Corey Seager's best days may be behind him.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, it's understandable. Like, it's a situation that the Red Sox were in up until this year. It's one that I was very familiar with Trevor Story. Is the conversation around Story was that he's too injury prone, and it happens too often. He's on too big a deal based on how the Red Sox were spending at the time. All of that was true. So I think it's an interesting move just because they obviously feel he's not the face of the team. Otherwise, I don't think they would be interested in making this move.
Right. So we'll see. That's the great thing about the trade, the hot stove league. There's so much fun to be looked at and to be gone over. It's a great time of year to be a baseball fan from that standpoint, because you get to see what's going on. So that's the fun part of it. So let's move over to the NFL. I can tell you right now that Jackson Dart will not be playing for the Giants this week. He did not pass concussion protocol, so he will be unavailable as we head into week 12 of the NFL. Last night, we already talked about Buffalo, Houston. Sunday night's game on NBC is the Buccaneers and the Rams, both of them trying to hang on to their division leads. Monday night's Carolina at San Francisco. So there you go from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what's going on in CBS, the single games. It's Indianapolis at Kansas City. Nance and Romo in town for that one. Indianapolis has played a whole lot better than anybody thought they would. But Kansas City at home, that's a tough call, and Kansas City might be, in a position to start that run to get them back in the playoff picture, and perhaps, another run through the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a curious case with Kansas City because I thought they started that run a couple weeks ago. When you saw them in New York, really was the first game where I felt like I saw Kansas City again. They got Xavier Worthy back. But since then, they haven't really maintained that level of play on a consistent basis. So I'm kind of waiting for that. They didn't play fantastic on offense last week in Denver. However, Denver has a fantastic defense and a home field advantage that you can't create anywhere else. So I'd be curious to see, because if they're going to do it, now is the time.
Well, we'll see. Romo and Nance, that's the national game on CBS. Very important game for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they go to Chicago. Iron Eagle, J.J. Watt on that one. Pittsburgh is looking in the rearview mirror and they see Baltimore coming. Chicago's played a bunch of close football games this year. I don't know what to think about this game, honestly. It's Pittsburgh's defense, Chicago's defense, both are pretty decent defenses. Chicago's offense, if Caleb Williams can keep from getting sacked, is not bad. Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh, we don't even know who's going to play quarterback. I mean, we're under the impression that it is Aaron Rodgers, but it may not be.
I was under the impression that it was going to be Mason Rudolph.
Well, Mason Rudolph runs. It's funny. Mason Rudolph Mason Rudolph might be the most underappreciated backup quarterback in football. He's come in many situations for the Steelers and led them to wins, only to be benched again whenever the quote unquote star quarterback returns. So will the Steelers offense not run well without Aaron Rodgers? Mason Rudolph probably knows the Steelers offense better than Aaron Rodgers does.
Yeah, it's very possible. What's it called? I mean, you want to talk about a guy who's really done everything for that city. His first tenure, he was the guy who got whacked over the head with a helmet when the incident with Myles Garrett occurred. So he's the guy that's put it all out there. You can also make the argument that the Steelers' offense hasn't been a very well-oiled machine with Aaron Rodgers as the starter.
True. They've gotten by, but they haven't looked good at it.
No, there's been some ugly wins for them, so they have their work cut out for them in terms of like, hey, maybe this is something that is beneficial for both sides, both for Aaron Rodgers and the offense, in terms of sometimes you just need a breather to take a break, and when you come back, it feels fresh and it feels new, and you feel reinvigorated, and maybe that's just what the Steelers' offense needs because it started off in a much stronger place than it has been these past few weeks.
Absolutely. New England, Cincinnati, that game, Kevin Harlan, Trent Green on the call for CBS. Oh, man, I don't it's Cincinnati is played decent football, but since New England has been on that run, it's going to be hard to believe that they're going to drop that game to Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's a tough one to believe. Just because Cincinnati's defense, it's been well chronicled. It did not matter who they had starting at quarterback. Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, Joe whoever.
Yeah, it had to be a guy named Joe.
Joe Montana could have came back and they would have gotten the same results.
Right,
because
Joe
they can't stop a nosebleed on defense. So that's their biggest issue, and they're not gonna. It's something that's been an issue the entire tenure of Zach Taylor, and the 1 year that it wasn't a glaring issue, they made the Super Bowl.
Right. So, all right, then we move on to the Jets, Baltimore. That game, Andrew Cardellone, Charlie Davis, Jason McCourty. Baltimore's on a winning streak. They're playing at home. The Jets aren't. It'll be an interesting game for the Jets. Defense might be helpful, but I think Baltimore comes out of here with a win.
Yeah, it's hard to see it any other way than that. Just because Baltimore has been on the uptick since the return of Lamar Jackson.
Right.
And for New York, they've had what has been the worst offense in the league for pretty much the entire year. They have not discriminated who they've been bad against. They've been bad against everybody, with the exception of Pittsburgh in Week 1. So it's hard to expect a random turnaround. It feels like they're just out there searching in the Meadowlands.
Well, the other interesting point is we talked about Todd Monken a few minutes ago. Todd Monken's offense is now the number one offense in the NFL when you go across all of the statistical areas. And that's a lot of that was without the benefit of having Lamar Jackson in the role of quarterback.
Yeah.
So, if Baltimore's just getting started, the Jets could be in for a very long afternoon.
Yeah. I think another key piece of this Baltimore puzzle right now is the fact that their defense is starting to play much better. If you remember at the start of the season,
they couldn't play much worse.
They couldn't play. Yeah, they just couldn't play defense at all. They were much in the scenario that the Jets find themselves now after those big trades. So they're playing a much more complete style of football now.
Yeah, they're required to because they just can't. They can't afford not to. All right, let's pop over and see what we got. The late games: Jacksonville at Arizona. Jacksonville's got to win if they have any hopes of staying alive in that race in the south of the AFC, Spiro Ditas and Adam Marshalletta on that call. Cleveland and Vegas, that's a game, friends and family game. Tom McCarthy and Ross Tucker on that call. It's just, if you live in Cleveland and if you live in Vegas and you want to see your team play, there it is for you, gang.
I think a better name for that one would be the I hate my friends and family game.
Right? Yeah, I'm embarrassing my friends and family bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not exactly something that you're looking at and going, oh wow, can't wait for this to happen.
Absolutely not.
We're over now at the Fox games, and the Fox games are Minnesota Green Bay. Joe Davis, Greg Olson on that one. It's funny to say must win for either of these teams, but this might even be an elimination game for one of these two teams.
Yeah, you never want to be sitting in an elimination sanario with 7 weeks left to play.
No.
Although it may not officially eliminate you, you don't want to be staring elimination. You don't want to be staring down the barrel of elimination this early into the season.
Well, you mentioned early on that, when we were talking about colleges, that, it's important to be able to control your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whoever wins this game will be in that position, will be able to control their own destiny. And right now, you would think Green Bay, but they've laid some eggs in the past couple weeks, and so as has Minnesota. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But whoever wins this game, in my mind, they control their own destiny, which may not necessarily lead them to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that is the thing. Is even if you control your own destiny, you still don't have a whole lot of control, or your destiny doesn't exactly. It's a bleak destiny at this point.
Giants and Detroit. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma there. The Giants will be without Jackson Dart. He did not pass, as I mentioned before, protocol, and so he'll be sitting it out. Detroit desperately needs this game, and they're at home. They're tough to beat at home.
Yeah, the part I'll say on New York side is, if they did start Jackson Dart, you would have to raise the question as to why. Mm-hmm. Why are you starting Jackson Dart? There's just no need, all things considered. This is a lost season. You fired your head coach. If he's even thinking about it, you pump the brakes and you say no shot. This guy is your future. He's your everything, and there's no reason to put that on the line for a game against the Lions, in which you're probably going to lose anyways.
Seattle, Tennessee, big game for Seattle. Kevin Kugler, Daryl Johnson on that call. Seattle needs to keep pace with the Rams, and so they're breathing down their neck. So that's one of those games where it's all or nothing for Seattle. They got to keep on keeping on. We move to the late games. Philadelphia, Dallas, Burkhardt and Brady on that one. Philadelphia has played well enough to win. Dallas has played inconsistent, which is kind of like Dallas's MO. Mm-hmm. So we will see what we'll see on that game. I don't know. I think Philly can go to Dallas and win that game.
Yeah, I think well enough to win is the perfect way of describing how the Eagles have played thus far. They haven't been impressive. They've been a team that's been riddled with team turmoil this year, all things considered, with A.J. Brown. They've faced seemingly every obstacle they can face, and they still just win football games. Doesn't matter how ugly the offense looks the entire time. They find ways to win. So, people bash Jalen Hurts, and I think you're lying if you're looking at him and going, well, yeah, this is definitely a top 10 guy in the league. But you're looking at him and going, I may not think that he's as good of a playmaker in terms of what he does at the quarterback position, but he's a better winner than 90% of these guys in the league.
Right. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons are at the Caesars Superdome for a game that is an NFC South game against the New Orleans Saints. And that game will be seen basically in the states of Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and as we affectionately called it in Florida, the Redneck Riviera. Basically, that's from around Tallahassee westward to the Louisiana state line. So that's where you got.
Those are the only people that need to see that game.
And maybe not even them. But yeah, I don't know what's gonna. Kirk Cousins, I guess, is starting now at Atlanta, right?
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is now the starter for Atlanta. Michael Penix has suffered another. It was an ACL sprain, but it requires a full reconstruction, which is weird. Yeah, but it's.
Look, if I'm Atlanta, I'm not going to take any chances with Penix.
Well, he can't play. He has to undergo.
Yeah, I know.
Reconstruction. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I'm putting him on the shelf and saying, you know what, if maybe I may not even want to see you this year. Because they're not playing for anything at this point, and you paid Cousins more money, than Baker Mayfield got to play for the Buccaneers. So
yeah, no,
this is Kirk Cousins' opportunity to prove that maybe he does deserve to be a front row quarterback, and he may be playing in a position where they can at the end of the season trade him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for Kirk Cousins, I hope the best in terms of that. In terms of where Atlanta stands in all of this, this is very much a scenario where they feel like they may need to just reset. If Michael Penix's ACL, and the reports are that it requires full reconstruction, with that, you've got him out for a decent portion next year too. Kirk Cousins is not the answer at his age. He's just not. He doesn't have it anymore. I hope that he comes out there and he finds it, and he finds himself a nice payday as a backup. But in terms of Atlanta, this is as bad as it can get, because they don't have their first round pick this year either.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that Kurt's a good guy, and he's done everything anybody's ever asked him to do. He got off to a bad start, obviously, last year in Atlanta. They decided to go with Michael Penix. He's the future for that team. But, anybody who gives up on Kirk Cousins, he still is a serviceable and decent game managing quarterback. So we'll see. I think they overpaid him to begin with, but that's Arthur Blank's money, not mine. But Kurt's a good dude, and I personally wish him well. He's always easy to talk to, and even when they lose, the guy has the ability to stand there and take all the questions and answer them, and do so without being a jerk about it.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's a class act from that standpoint. All right, brother. I know that you're on the road. So tell me, what will you be looking for watching this weekend?
Well, obviously, you got your college football, your NFL football. It's also been the start of Feast Week this week in terms of basketball. So you've got a lot of different tournaments going on, a lot of different places around the country that are really interesting and exciting. They're different matchups that you don't normally get. Georgia's playing Xavier tonight in basketball.
And then
they'll play a winner of West Virginia and Clemson later in the weekend. So you've got a bunch of different basketball matchups that are starting. I mean, heck, you had a USC, and I can't remember who they were playing. I think it was Troy, maybe, going to like triple overtime last night.
Wow, that's a fun one. Troy takes USC to triple overtime. It doesn't say much for USC.
No, it's not a great sign in terms of the USC basketball program for this year, if that's what you're looking for.
No, if you're a basketball fan in LA, it's either the Lakers or UCLA.
Yeah.
Everybody else plays a distant second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think there's some people out there that don't even know the Clippers still exist.
It's very possible. I mean, that's not a good basketball team right now. The Clippers are an awful basketball team right now, actually.
I know people that go to in LA that go out just to go to that new arena out there, which, by the way, happens to be at the opposite end of the parking lot of SoFi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Steve Ballmer spent a lot of money on that wall.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. He spent a lot of money on that team. So it's hard to feel sorry for him, though. I think he's okay. We're not going to have to worry about doing a fundraiser for him anytime soon. So, yeah, there is a lot of college basketball coming up. So, anyway, all right. Well, that's it, boys and girls, for us on this week. We've had a great time. From Matthew, I'm Jim. You guys hopefully have a very safe and good weekend, and we'll catch you on Monday again around the 3:00 hour. And by all means, hit the bell, like us, and please leave a comment. We're always happy to answer them. All right.
Absolutely.
Until Monday, guys, be well. Take care.